We had 180 cars turn up. We've got space for like 90 cars, probably 90, 95 cars, sensibly. They were everywhere. Every little corner we could fit something in. They were down the verges, they were across the road. It just got absolutely mad. Hello, I'm Andy. I run Sunday Startup and Eurorun. So I guess everyone's love of cars comes from somewhere. Mine would definitely come from my parents, especially Dad. Every opportunity growing up from small age, Dad would always buy me toy cars or anything like that. And anywhere we went was a museum with cars, or going to watch the touring cars as much as we could. And Mum and Dad used to trial Land Rovers as well, so there was always that sort of competition of involving vehicles, or anything on four wheels was always a big part of our life. And every time we went on holiday, I grew up going to some very nice places abroad and things like that, and we'd always fly to the wrong place, and Dad would then make sure we had a car and we'd drive to somewhere else. So it was always about the road trip or the journey rather than the destination, or just as much. That was when we went to America, we'd always fly to a different place, or we used to drive out to Italy when we could have flown. Good memories of sort of Dad's Volvo 240 and then Dad's Volvo 850 estate. And I guess, that's rubbed off on me of cars have this attachment to, you've got to go and use these cars, you've got to go and have these adventures in them, and they're a big part of everything really. And I guess that's sort of where my love of travelling with vehicles came from. Car history, it's long. I think I did a list before meeting Ben, and I had, I think, about 34 cars, which isn't bad going, seeing as I'm only 37. Some have stayed longer than the others. I get a lot of stick from friends about how long this one's going to stay for, or and I guess I think Charlie from Upton put the nail on the head the other day when he said, you've got to collect them all. And he's very true. I think collecting, trying these different cars, or if you've got a scratch to itch, go and do it. Go and try that car that you're not quite sure you might like. Go and try it. And I guess that's where it's come from. Started with Peugeot 306 1.4 Meridian, 1999. And the same as everyone back then, it was early 2000s, so it was max power era. So everyone sort of slightly modified, so it had 17s, it was lowered, it had an exhaust, it was slow, but it made a good noise, so therefore it probably didn't make a good noise at all. We went and did things, it took us everywhere. It was that sense of freedom. I went to Castle Combe with it, even though it was a 1.4 and all of that sort of thing. I guess that then moved on to my second car, which was Peugeot 306 GTI 6, which I adored, absolutely adored. And I'd love to have another one day. It's one of those things that it got me into that car community that started off with sort of modifying. And this car community's has always been there. It's whether it's a supercar meet or it's a modified meet or it's cars and coffee these days. Those things weren't there back in the day. And if you're from Salisbury like I am, that was the Maltings car park. And I remember being back in the 90s, there's a corner of the Maltings car park which was full of boy racers. It's still the same now, 25, 30 years on. And the generation, and I think that's wonderful. I think if you're interested in cars, there's always someone there who wants to talk to you about your car or wants to talk about their car. And that car community, I think I fell in love with it back when I was 17, 18. And I still see the odd person now randomly that we were friends with back then. And I think that it's sort of stayed with me across sort of all the years, right up until now, doing Sunday Startup. After the GTI 6, this was my first proper car. I bought an E46 330 Ci. It had to be Imola Red. It was wonderful. Manual. Loved it to pieces. Phenomenal car. I recommend all my cars to anyone. I got asked the other day, what do I have any regrets about any cars I own? And no, they've all been brilliant because they've all done something a bit different. We went to Nürburgring a couple of times. We organised trips out to Nürburgring, went around that with friends with their cars, normally all BMWs, and that was brilliant. And that stayed with me for 6 years. That was probably my longest running car that I've owned. Yeah, without a doubt, most stuff say 6 or 7 months, a year at the most. Then I kept hold of that as long as I could. I changed careers. I'm now a gamekeeper, and I've been that for the last probably 18, 20 years now. No, probably less than 15 years. And so I held on to as long as I could, but something had to change. So it had to be a Land Rover, obviously. And Land Rover's always been my blood. Grew up with Land Rovers. Dad had a Land Rover garage when I was small, and there's always been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Land Rovers on the drive. The whole point was it had to be a Land Rover. So Dad found me a 300 TDI green Discovery, green on tan, which is a favourite of mine. Always has been. Dad's old Volvo was the same colour. And that was brilliant. That became sort of the dog wagon, and it made sense over the BMW. Like I said, Land Rover's always been in my blood, so it was this sort of community appeared. And I had a friend who bought a Defender. We sat in the pub one night and decided we were going to drive to Sahara Desert. So we got a map out, did a bit of research, did everything, and basically put some kit on the Land Rover. Probably far more than we needed because we thought we were adventurers and no one had ever been there. Only to get back and see that somebody had driven a Testarossa basically the same hotel that we had. But we thought we were fantastic. So, but wonderful times with friends, and it's the biggest memory I've got probably in a vehicle. And what an adventure. We didn't know what was around the next corner, and we crossed Sahara, and we had floods, and we had rivers over the bonnet, and it was, yeah, wonderful, and it was brilliant. And I think that's my biggest thing with vehicles. They're there to be used. They're there to be driven. They are, I think, experiences with vehicles are just what you've got to do with them. I'm not one for tucking things away. They need to be used no matter what it is. And I think that ends up sort of linking with the Sunday Startup, and again with the trips we've done and with Eurorun of take these vehicles and go and make memories with them. I think that's your biggest thing. I think that they're a part of us. So yeah, that was half of the reason to take the Land Rover that we dragged out of a basically hedge and drive to Africa. That spurred on to doing a few tours. I ran a little company with a friend, and we went back to Africa, and we did some trips to Wales, and we also did a trip out to Pyrenees and Spain and Portugal. So we did a few of them, and that was great and things like that. But times changed and work got busy and things like that, so that sort of became a bit of a sideline. But I never lost that sort of passion for running tours, trips, or with like-minded people. After the Land Rover went, I decided I was going to get back into cars a little bit, things like that. So wanted a performance car again. So, and I've always liked to estate touring. Dad always had estates growing up, and I just think if you're going to buy something like that, why not have the estate version, because you get the practicality with the engine. So I bought a C5 RS6 in silver, like layer cake, and there was nothing played inside but the Colt She-Cell Sanctuary because it had to be. It went with the car. That was brilliant. It took 4 of us down to Le Mans, loaded up with luggage, effortlessly, even if it was doing 8 or 9 miles to the gallon, I think, averaged. That was brilliant. That then changed. That disappeared. That had to go. Again, back into, I normally switch between a car and a Land Rover and things like that back then. If you know your Land Rovers and you're an enthusiast, you know that the Camel Trophy is the sort of main thing or the top thing that you used to watch on videos and things like that back in the day. A chance to own a Camel Trophy Discovery came up, so I jumped at the chance because it was what I watched with my dad growing up on videos and things like that. And yeah, if you're a Land Rover man, I think you've got to own a Camel Trophy if you get the opportunity. That came up, so the RS6 went, and that's recently just gone. It went last week to the chap that I've kept it then. That went back to the chap that I bought it off of. That stayed. Alongside that, I had a bit of spare money, so I bought myself something a bit different. And we looked online. I always like BMWs, so we looked online. Had a look at Z4. Tried a couple of convertibles, wasn't quite right. And then a chap that I work with, Luke, sent me we like to send each other cars and try to bully each other into buying them. And I'd bullied him into buying his Golf GTI Club Sport rather than buying a kitchen with his girlfriend. So now it was his turn to bully me into buying something. So on a wet, dreary Tuesday evening, I think, we drove up to Luton, met a man in the dark with a Z4 coupe, dark blue on caramel interior, which I think was the caramel interior that sold it to me, with a few M bits put on it. Came back, and that was brilliant. It kind of got me back into the car scene, and back into going sort of up to Cafe in a Machine, that sort of idea. And then me and my other half took it to Switzerland, and that was brilliant. We drove through the night down Switzerland, and we did 2 or 3 days exploring and going all the passes that everyone goes to these days and things like that. And it was wonderful, and it was a brilliant car, and I can't fault it. And if anybody is thinking about buying a Z4 Coupe, and I know Ben is talked about one, they're wonderful. They're brilliant. We fitted all our luggage in the back, 2 paddle boards in the back. I could fit 5 spaniels in the back, and you still had a performance car. They're a brilliant car, and I think very underrated. After the Z4, I came back after the Z4, and it was brilliant. And I went shopping and couldn't decide quite what I wanted. Went and looked at lots of different things, and tried different things. I just wanted something with a bit more power, and what I ended up going to look at and ended up buying was a 996 turbo manual 911. Never had a Porsche, always wanted to scratch that itch. And if you're going to scratch one, why not scratch it with a turbo? Phenomenal car, brilliant car. I mean, wonderful, hugely fast, hugely entertaining for driving, and just did everything very well. We went on a friend that I run Sunday Startup with, Dan Stag, out to Germany, and we went and did the Black Forest, and we did the Nürburgring, we did a couple of laps in the wet, and it was still a little squirrely in the wet, even with all its four-wheel drive and things like that, which made Tom, the passenger, wince a bit, I think, as we left the cones. Fantastic car, really, really loved it, and glad I scratched that Porsche itch. If the only thing I maybe would say with it, when people spoke to me, is because it was so good and it did everything so well and so easily and so capable, which is why people daily 911s. I can completely see. We had a wet Sunday startup back when we first started, and there was a joke. It was a Porsche meet because everyone just turned up in the dailies that worked, and it was Porsches. Basically, everyone left the fancy stuff at home and bought their 911s because they worked so well. I guess for that reason, I decided that it didn't become less special. That's probably the wrong way of putting it. Because it was so easy to use, I ended up using it for normal jobs, and then it sort of became less special. So I wanted to change. Went and looked at a few other things, and ended up. I don't think anyone would quite understand when I said I'd sold my 911 Turbo to buy a TVR Tuscan, which was wild and mad and just. I mean, the stupid things of people who don't know can unlock the doors. You get in it, it didn't always want to start. You had to treat it a bit like a classic. It was a joke. It smelled like glue. It did smell like glue. It was brilliant fun, and I probably had it at the wrong time. Probably had it over winter, and I should have had it over the summer. Unfortunately, like I said, it's the one car I probably owned that I would. Like I said it before, it's if I could have kept it, I would have kept it as an extra car. I probably wanted it to be a mainstream car, and you probably need to treat them a bit more like a classic. I had 3 trips abroad, one to Italy, one to Switzerland, and Le Mans coming up the following year. And I don't know if I was great. People would tell me I'm a wimp, but I think I needed reliability, and I think going away with a group, I needed something that was going to be that I could trust. So I changed the Tuscan out. And this is this running joke that I change my cars every 6 months, and this probably does sound like I do. But you've got to collect them all. This is what you've got to do. So couldn't decide what to buy. And looked at F-Type and chatted to Ben, actually. And we had many a chat at Sunday Startup, or many a chat online about F-Types and what to look for and what not to look for and what works and things like that. And then I went down to, there was a dealership, it was a Saturday morning, and I decided to go out, and I basically fell in love with a Fire Sand convertible V6S. with all the right spec on it, and it just looked phenomenal. Sat in the showroom, and it really stood out, and that was it. And I sold the TVR to a very nice man who's still got it to this day, and I still see pictures of it online, and people bump into him, so that's very nice. He loves that. And then I got the V6, and that was brilliant. The F-Type was a wonderful car. Again, another car that I would highly recommend to anyone if anyone's thinking about buying one or wants an everyday sports car that they can use all the time in a coupe or a convertible. Do it, because it ticks all those boxes. I think that Jag got it right with the styling and everything on it. I think they are a wonderful car. So that did all my trips last year. It took us to Le Mans. It took us to Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, twice. I did 10,000 miles in it in 5 months. 7,000 of that was abroad. So it got used. It went in the snow. We had first time we went out to Switzerland. They'd had late dumps of snow, so we had lots of snow. We had rain. I think the second time I went out, I put the roof down on the way to the tunnel, and I think the roof went back up when I got back home. That was fantastic. That's currently that was my last car. That's gone at the minute. That got sold a couple of months back to free up some funds to put into a business opportunity or business moving forward, which is Euro Run. But I still wanted something a bit fun, and I guess I've gone full circle now and gone back to French hot hatch. Hence the Megane out behind me, the R26. When I was about 20, I worked at Renault in Salisbury as a service advisor, a trainee service advisor, and there was a liquid yellow R26 Megane, exactly the same as that one behind me, sat in the dealership, and I'd look at it every day and walk around it, and I'd go and sit in it at lunchtimes, and I said one day I'll own one of them. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity, while prices are fairly sensible on them, to go and grab one, and it's brilliant. It's great fun. It's that stupid plasticky French inside, but puts a smile on your face every time you go out in it, and it's amazing. I don't know if it's an iconic car. It's definitely something about. It's definitely a modern classic, I called it, and it's amazing wherever you go recently, and I park it up. People with some serious cars want to come and talk to you about it because they remember when it came out, and I think the liquid yellow helps that. And I was leaving Wilton Wake Up the other day, and there was two lads sat on the verge, and one went, "There's nothing cooler than liquid yellow," and they are right. I would agree. It's a fantastic colour. So that's a Megane. That's what I've got at the moment. Next car. I always pick the next car before I bought the previous car. I guess the next car, and I think this will come from a local chap that comes to start up and things like that. Chris, he hasn't helped me here with his V8 Vantage N430. So I think that's probably what's going to be next. It's just finding the next one. So that'll be next car. There's probably a couple of other cars to mention in between. One would be Mavis. Now, Mavis is a 1966 Series 2A Land Rover, who I acquired about 3 years ago, and will never, out of all the cars, that's the one that will never go anywhere. It's taken two lots of friends to their weddings. It takes the dogs to the pub in the summer. It's just brilliant. Everyone loves Mavis. Every opportunity someone wants to borrow Mavis. Can we do this in Mavis? Can we do this? I've used it. I run a charity Land Rover run each Christmas. We get 100, 120 Land Rovers, and Mavis is always there leading the way. She's never let me down. Touch lots of wood. It's a Land Rover, and I think Land Rovers are always my blood, so that will always stay. So Mavis will never go anywhere. And I guess the other thing to probably mention is that I think, like I said, every vehicle, every car has got to have a story behind it. Now, I'd sold the 911 Turbo, and I hadn't picked up the Tuscan yet, so I didn't want to drive 911. The Daily was in having some work done. I couldn't take the Land Rover to Bicester. Bicester Scramble is one of my favourite things, without a doubt. The car park's worth going for anyway, and I love it, and I was getting proper FOMO about missing out. So Saturday night, sat on Facebook Marketplace, a 2002 Jag XJ Sport with about a month's MOT left on it came up. So off we went down to Southampton with Dad, bought it off a man on a houseboat. I bought a Jag off a man off a houseboat. It sounds like something out of Smith and Sniff. It's just a bizarre story, and And I was telling Luke about it, and he couldn't believe where we bought it. And there were some other strange things that happened that night with it. So it was very strange, but it was wonderful and it great, and it got me to Bicester in the morning, and we wafted up with a couple of knackered rear bushes. And it wafted back, and it was brilliant. Unfortunately, it's parked up for the last year, but it is on the list to next. It's the next car to sort of have some work done and things like that. There's been other cars in between. I think, like I said, the 34. There's been, I think, I'm 14, 15 Land Rovers, Defenders, Discoveries, and things like that. But they've all done something where I've been somewhere. I've got a memory, I think, on each one. There was a black TD5 Discovery that I bought just for towing, and we decided it was snowy, so we'll go to Wales and see how far we can get on the tracks and bits and pieces on road tyres, and it performed brilliantly. It showed up all our friends with all their off-roaded vehicles and things like that. It's brilliant. I think, it's back to that. Every vehicle, if you can have a memory or a story and you remember why you bought it and things like that, and I haven't got a single vehicle that I regret buying because I've done something with all of them. Sunday startup. Yeah, I guess that's where most people know my face from or know me from. So, where do we start with it? So 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago last month, actually. So Luke and I, who I've mentioned before, used to work with, we'd pop up to Cafe in a Machine, that was it, really. So 3 years ago, probably Cafe Machine was, you had to drive to the Midlands to go to any kind of coffee, cars, variety kind of thing. There was odd things popping up here and there, but not like it is today. I mean, every weekend there's something, which I think is wonderful. Every weekend you can go somewhere different, or you can do things like that. So Sunday Startup originated from not wanting to drive an hour, 2 hours on a Sunday. So I live locally. I live just over the hill. Anna and Mags had just opened this Stools Cafe. Been open about 6-7 months, I think. So I popped in, said, could I possibly run a car meet on a Sunday morning? They said, yeah, fine, brilliant. I chucked a couple of posters out online. I don't know where, just odd bits here and there. I thought I might get 20 cars, and 15 were probably the people that I'd invited. We had 50, 60 cars turn up on the first one, of all shapes and sizes, and I was sort of blown away a bit. So it was brilliant, wonderful. And then word spread, and then I think it went on, and we had some busier ones. Some got up to 60, 70, 80. Some were a bit quieter. We did the Christmas one, I think, and it was sort of down to 40. But it didn't really matter what turned up. It was the people that had turned up. And that's grown over time. And I look forward to it. I get so excited the Saturday night before a Sunday startup. I said, because it's so exciting, and I love it, and I love the people that come, and I love the cars, and it's brilliant. And the girls at the stalls are brilliant. They host us really well, and you couldn't ask for a better venue. I think what makes it so special and what I think's different is because of it's wet today, so we can't really see, but because of the yard and having this circle in the middle with a big tree, you can park the cars on different angles. So nothing's in a line, nothing's in a car park, which I love, and it's brilliant and we'll jam them in and get them all at different angles. And photographers seem to love that because you can get behind the cars and take pictures. You're not just looking at a row of cars from the front. And I think that's probably what makes it a bit different or a bit special. And the coffee's bloody good, and the food's good. It grew and grew and grew, and I would say I'm trying to work out. Last Christmas, it would have been the December one. It got mad. People kept asking, "Are we run it through the winter? Is it going to carry on?" And I was like, "Yeah, why wouldn't we wait?" Not thinking that other places didn't run theirs through the winter, so everyone ended up coming here. It was manic on the December one, and I went and had a beer with Andy, who would be nice to be watching this and laughing, and he assured me that no, it was just because it was Christmas. Next month will be fine. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to change anything. He was very wrong, and I do like to remind him he was very wrong. It was mad. Come January, we had 180 cars turn up. We've got space for like 90 cars, probably 90, 95 cars, sensibly. They were everywhere. Every little corner we could fit something in. They were down the verges. They were across the road. It just got absolutely mad. And we sat down after. I said, we're going to have to sit down. So we sat down and had breakfast afterwards, after we calmed down. And we said we've got to ticket it, even though I never wanted to ticket it because it's that nice of, oh, it's nice weather, we'll go out for a run to the startup on the Sunday. To manage it, it's a way of us, and also the whole thing about it. The reason we started it was to talk to people about their cars, and to talk about what they drove and what they came in and what they used to have and how long they've had it. And when it's so busy, we never get a chance to that because we just stood on the gate or trying to park people, trying not to let people park across the road. So the ticketing system came in and it worked really, really well. People supported it and completely understood. And actually they knew that they could, if they bought a ticket, and it all goes to charity, that they'd get a space. And that means they could turn up, get a space, and they weren't disappointed they'd driven from far away and things like that. So that came in last year. And that's been running for nearly a year. Again, as I mentioned before, I'm so overwhelmed by the support we get and the community. And this goes back to what I mentioned before about this community of people, the mix of people, and the variety of cars, and just like it's created this huge group of friends. I think, and I don't like to use the word family because it sounds very fast and furious, but I think it has. It's this. And it's lovely. You go to other car meets, and and other things have popped up, I think, alongside it, and you get to know people. And I think it was last week, and me and Luke, again, back to Luke, normally goes to car things with me. We're coming out of Scramble, and this made me smile a lot. We came out of Scramble, and just filtering through the traffic, we ended up being 4 cars that come to Sunday Startup up near Bicester. I pulled in behind Harry and his MX-5, and then I can't remember what else it was, and then Merv in his GTR went past, and everyone put their hands up and waves because everyone knows each other, but it comes from here, and I think that's wonderful, and I feel very privileged to be a part of something like that. Like I said, it's the last Sunday of every month. It has been right from the very start, and it works. It works really well. Like I said, and my biggest thing is talking to people. Last time we had a couple of 1930s Bentleys turn up, which we hadn't seen before. And again, that's the thing, even with the tickets, we're still getting fresh people coming in and haven't heard about it. And we spent half an hour chatting to this lady. It was her father's these Bentleys, and he'd been to Sahara, and then when he'd done this and done that, and she was overwhelmed that we basically, on another side of things, we also do awards. So we brought the awards in a little while back, probably for the last year or so. Maybe a bit more than that. And then categories change and things like that. And going back to this lady, we awarded her Best Classic, and she sent me an email after it saying her dad would have been so proud that his Bentley won Best Classic at a car show. And the smile on everyone's faces of people, I've never won anything in my life. And they get they feel honoured that there's cars being picked over someone else. But there's so many more nicer things here. Yeah, but we've picked yours because we particularly liked it for this reason, and that really works, I think, and people love that. And there's such a nice atmosphere here. There's no prejudice about anyone's cars. There's no people. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you drive, and it's amazing. You'll have something worth, I don't know, £250 pull up next to something that's worth, I don't know, £2,000. But the man who's got the expensive car probably he drove one of those, so he wants to talk to that man who's got that car and why he bought that Beetle and things like that. So it all works really well. So that's Sunday Startup, really. And I guess I will give a shout out because we do. Dan helps me right from the start, so that's a massive help, and I couldn't do anything on my own. Kate, again, his wife, helps out. Massive shout out to Jack Bold as well, who makes these trophies out of his own time and his money and things like that, and everyone else that kind of helps, and people come from far away, and this community and this friendship that we've created, that's the wrong way, so that's been created by Sunday Startup, is lovely. It's a wonderful thing, and long may it continue. And I look forward to, like I said, to every Sunday morning for Sunday Startup, because you never know what's going to come and you never know who you're going to meet. So off the back of Sunday Startup, I've created Euro Run. So again, there's always an idea and things always tick in my head, and I spend too long. And I'm sure I bore people with my ideas, and I'd like to do this and like to do that. So the whole thing was that I've always kind of wanted to go on a rally, and one of these rallies. I mean, grew up with Dad watching Cannonball Run, and then Gumball. I was sort of young when Gumball came out, and I remember watching that and think, oh, what a wonderful thing. But that's always okay, another level up. And I've always had this idea that I've wanted to go on one, but never quite. I mean, I have, yeah, I'm not at that level, and I don't know if I want to be at that level. Um, but I thought there has to be the people like me that have your sort of real car enthusiasts. No matter what you've got, whether you've got, I don't know, a Triumph Stag, or whether you've got a Porsche 911, or whether you love your Land Rover Defender, whatever it is, fast or classic or something like that. But you're a true enthusiast. So the whole idea behind Eurorun is basically to create a annual rally starting in the UK and finishing in Europe. On the whole thing, that the days are filled with fantastic driving roads and locations, but that point is down to you. We provide a fantastic breakfast in the mornings, and then suggestions of your route for the day, and then you'll obviously, with knowing you've got dinner and welcome drinks and your hotel sorted, meet staff in the hotel in the evenings, and pick your fantastic, slightly quirky hotels, and make sure every hotel's different along the way. So you can cover some fantastic scenery, roads, and bits and pieces at your own pace, in a group, in a large group. You might meet people at the bar the night before and think, oh yeah, lovely, we get on really well. Well, we'll leave at the same time as you tomorrow. That kind of idea of sort of creating, again, this community, of taking this Sunday startup community and taking it on the road, stood around in the mornings, on a Sunday morning having a cup of coffee, is the same as sort of stood around in the evening with a cold beer in the car park, out the front of the hotel chatting about their cars. That I wanted to take that sort of community thing on the road, and at whatever level people want to bring. It's sort of not that who are you, it's just, it doesn't matter who you are or what you've got or how old you are or how old your car is or anything like that. So this is what I want to create, and hopefully that will come across in how we're doing it. 2025 is the first one, next June 22nd to the 26th, starting in Hook, Hampshire, England, Tinley Hall. Fantastic location, perfect setting. It took me ages to find, so I'm very pleased with it. Start there, head off down, Eurotunnel over, down through France, Champagne region, just on the edge of the Champagne region, Castle Chateau Hotel, stay there, and then again next day we'll be further down through France into Switzerland to stay in Andermatt, which is the perfect place to go and explore Susten Pass, Furka Pass, Gothard Pass, all those. And again, you can do them as much as you want. Obviously, you can pick your route over the top. We'll suggest different ways and things like that. And again, you'll end up in the French Alps at the finish, Hotel Logis, which is basically further down sort of Teens area. Lovely hotel, fantastic veranda that we picked. I think that's sort of one of the things that started. I had this image of everyone on this veranda in the evening with a drink, chatting about the day, and the cars are parked below, and it's just looking out across the sort of French Alps. And yeah, I think this was one of the hotels that I thought, so I have to create something almost around that one. Finish point's Fairpont, so I probably mentioned that. Finish point is Monaco, at the Fairmont Hotel, and we've hired the rooftop bar, looking out across the hairpin and looking across the bay. So that'll be the last run from Hotel Logis, through the French Alps, down along the coast, and finish at the Fairmont Hotel in Monaco, for basically the last evening for drinks, dinner. There'll be awards and that sort of thing, and then obviously breakfast in the morning. Everyone says their goodbyes, and then everyone can kind of make their way back as they want to. That's your finish line. Again, if you want your vehicle shipped back, we're in conversations with shipping companies, so we can sort that out as well. If you want your vehicle taken back to the UK and you want to fly, you obviously stay a few days or however it works. So that's the idea behind it. That's 2025. I've got 2026, 27, 28 routes potentially in my head, because I've always got these places that I guess I want to take people. We did a few, on a separate thing, we did a few trip tours back in the summer, took small groups away down to Italy, Switzerland, things like that, and that worked really well. And that's something we kind of want to look at going to the future on a smaller scale, much sort of only sort of 5 or 6 people. So that worked really, really well. And we've got a few ideas going with that on the side. But yeah, for Euro runs, I guess the thing. But our main thing is taking that community of Sunday Startup and taking it on the road.